Travelers on the Omnibus occasionally touches on mature subject matter with mature language. As such, the audience discretion is advised. Hey everybody, welcome back to Travelers on the Omnibus, a field trip through nerd and pop culture. My name's James McCarthy.
I'm Ethan Skinner. I almost said my name wrong.
That would be a really man. We are off to a great start.
Blubbing
This
your
movie
own
fucked
name.
you up, didn't it?
A little bit.
I'm Jody Kite.
I'm Brady Davis.
All right, so we've survived this part so far. Thank God. That's usually the easiest part of the show.
It's too early to have an existential crisis.
We know who we are and what we are up to.
Do we?
Yes.
For the most part, I think.
We are very good with our space and time until hour 2 hits in
I
the
was about to say
recording.
time, we
and
are
then,
very bad
And then we're
with.
just gone.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Also, Slime from Dragon Quest is here. He's sitting in the middle of the table, so that's very good there. Let's start it off with Big Brady Davis. What have you been up to, sir?
We'll start off with the downer, and move up from there. Movies that were nominated for Best Picture was on my radar. It came out on Max this past Friday, and that is The Zone of Interest. And I watched it, and oh boy! So this is a movie. It's a Holocaust movie, and it's a PG-13 Holocaust movie. There's no violence. There's no blood. There's no gore. There is no anything. It's rated PG-13. And this is one of the most harrowing movies I have ever watched in my entire life because it is about the family of the commandant of Auschwitz and their life because they lived right next to the camp of Auschwitz. So you never see anything happen. In fact, like the one shot that they show that is inside the camp, it's a close-up kind of Dutch looking up angle at the commandant Hess. And you may ask, like, how does this even work? How is this harrowing? It's because of the sound design of this movie. And I'm so glad this movie won Best Sound for the Oscar because it would have absolutely fucking been robbed. Because while they're just going about their lives and just normally kids playing and the people cleaning up and doing all of this stuff, you're hearing all of the atrocities happen.
Oh,
you're
God.
hearing dogs bark, and you're hearing people scream, and you're hearing gunshots, and you're also hearing things like a motorcycle revving because the real Rudolf Huss paid somebody to rev up their engine constantly so that it drowned out the noises that happened in the camp. It's not an interesting movie. It's an interesting movie. It's not if I just explained like what happened, it would seem very boring because it's very much these people going about their lives and things like this. But it's that like not a lot happens in the movie. Some people would find it boring, but I think it's a very important movie because of the just talking about the banality of evil. Like, how could these people, like, they just ignore that? Like, you're just constantly looking, and it doesn't hold your hand for anything. Like, there's one part where they get the guy's wife gets this bag, and she pours out. It's just these clothes, and she tells all the servants who are women from the nearby village to pick what you want. And like, I gasped when I realized, oh shit, that's clothes that they took from the people. And she just told them, get the dresses and whatever that you want. Man. Yeah, this like a lot of movies this past year, like hit me pretty hard. Like I would say the endings, especially like the ending of Oppenheimer, the ending of Killers of the Flower Moon, they hit me pretty hard, but like nothing that I watched in the past year hit me as hard as this one. Like I cried at the end of this. Like there's a point in it that I'm not going to spoil that when it hit me what they were showing, I was like, oh my God. And I cried. Like it's a very, very important movie. I'm not going to say like everybody in the whole world needs to watch this, cause it's not a fun movie to watch. Like it's not like you could find yourself very bored of it, but you have to really like pay attention and watch it. And it's a very moving movie, and it is it's very good. Like it's like Steven Spielberg himself said, this is the best Holocaust movie I've ever seen, and the man made Schindler's List. Something that's very interesting is like there has been some discourse in the past of people going, like different directors saying, I'm not ever going to make a Holocaust movie because there's no way to make a Holocaust movie without like glamorizing Nazis and things like this. In fact, Sandra Hüller, who was also in Anatomy of a Fall, is in this. She is the commandant's wife, and she said like, I'm never going to play a Nazi because you can't do it without glamorizing it. And this one doesn't glamour, like it forces you to watch just this very boring, they're going about their day and this and that and everything. And it just, it does so many things that you think a movie is supposed to do. And it refuses to do those things because it's not going to give them, like even some of the best like Holocaust movies or World War II movies tend to like glamorize Nazis a little bit. At least a little bit, because it's a movie. Like that's what a movie does, is it glamorizes whatever subject it has. It does. It's about. I mean, and this movie like absolutely refuses to do that. Like you will not ever, like nobody could watch this and think that any of these Nazis are cool. Like you get a problem sometimes where like neo-Nazis will watch a World War II movie and they're like, oh man, they really actually like this movie because it makes the Nazis look really cool. And this is a movie that refuses to do that. Like it absolutely refuses to do that. So yeah, this is, like I said, this is a super important movie. And like prepare like a palate cleanser if you do watch it, because it's not an easy movie to watch. It's a shorter movie. It's only like an hour 45, so it's not like it doesn't outstay its welcome. But it does like hit you very hard. Like I was pretty devastated at the end of it, and it was yeah. So that's Zone of Interest.
I'd like to make a point, and this is going to sound like I'm starting off as a joke, but this will be serious. So there is a filmmaker by the name of Uwe Boll, and he made a movie about Auschwitz. Now, if you know about Uwe Boll movies are not very good, but there is a scene in that movie where it's just two guards talking, and behind them you can hear like people screaming. You hear all of these sounds of just this kind of evil that's going on there. And when you spoke to the banality of the evil, that scene handled by a different, better director and better screenwriters, I feel could be a powerful movie. And that I think you've just described that with a Zone of Interest. Like I said, that sounded like I was starting out as a joke, but that scene has sat with me because this could have been so much better. Just the one scene. The rest of that is just. But
directed Zone of Interest.
Jonathan Glazer, he also did Under the Skin, which is Scarlett Johansson's like an alien. He did they did a really interesting, like they shot at Auschwitz, and they had to like build the house because the original house was like in disrepair and owned by somebody else, and because it was like a heritage site, they couldn't like build anything, and they wanted to like make as little mess as possible, so to speak. So what they did was it's all natural light. In fact, there's some parts that take place at night that are through a thermal camera. They just set up like cameras and microphones, like hidden microphones all over and some of them weren't like, I watched a thing where they actually did some like CG where they like would remove some of the cameras, and they just set them up all over the place and just kind of told them, hey, go over here and do the scene. And they just kind of like, they had like so much footage because it was just kind of them just walking around doing stuff and going over their lines, and stuff does happen. But like, yeah. But a lot, what I really liked about this movie is that oftentimes Nazis are the big bad guy. They are the evil thing. They're this ultimate evil. They're often portrayed as like monsters. And this kind of brings it home that these were people and people did this. And I think that's an important lesson that needs to be told, so that it's less likely that something like the Holocaust happens again. But yeah, like it's a really, really good movie. I think I don't want to say like you should watch it because it's not an easy movie, and you're not going to enjoy it. But I think it's an important film, and if you think that's important, that you should, and if you think that it's important as well, I think you should probably watch it. But I'm not gonna say you have to watch it because again, it's not a fun watch. So like it's gonna be a thing. So I did that. So that's the downer. Let's bring it up a little bit. So Sunday, we're gonna go in a different direction. I watched Monkey Man, which is Dev Patel's directorial debut, also starring Dev Patel. I love Dev Patel. He's a really good actor.
He was the lead in Green Knight, right?
Yes, he was the lead in Green Knight. I've liked him in everything that I've seen him in. He's great. He's great. So this is, I don't want to reduce it to this, but kind of, it's a revenge movie, but it's a revenge movie with a lot. It actually says something. It's kind of a scathing indictment of the nationalist politics of present day India, and how they treat people, the minority groups and the less fortunate in the world, in the country. And Dev plays this guy who kind of goes on a revenge mission. He does this like bare knuckle boxing or martial arts thing where everybody wears like a mask, and he wears a monkey mask because the story of like Hanuman is like very important in this, and it's run by Sharlto Copley, who is just the sleaziest Sharlto Copley type. If you know who that is, you know what I mean. He kind of infiltrates this club where he knows this chief of police who he's trying to get revenge on, and it ends up he gets there's a larger system at play, and he starts to get revenge on that. And it's it's a really, really good movie. There's a lot of like good action. The first half is like very, very chaotic, and it might be a little bit like too much. Like it might legitimately make you queasy, as chaotic as it is. But other than that, I think like especially like that last half is like really, really good. Like they do some really good stuff with that. But it's a really, really good movie if you like action movies. If you like revenge movies, it's got a little bit of John Wick. It's also got a little bit of like Jackie Chan and all these other kung fu movies, and it's got a little bit of Bollywood in there. But yeah, it's really, really, really good. So yeah, Monkey Man, check that out. Really quick, I've been building some stuff for Crisis Protocol. I've gotten in some other stuff, trying to build up my X-Men list. So I got that going on. And then the last thing I've been really doing is the Lorcana Championships is coming up April 20th. Store championships here at McNarb Gaming in Goshen, Mississippi. And I've been kind of having an existential crisis of what I'm going to play because I've been playing a lot of Pixelborn, trying to figure out, because there's so much of a rock, paper, scissors in the meta right now that it's very hard for me to decide what I want to play. And in fact, I thought I had it narrowed down to two decks, which was a Ruby Sapphire kind of control type deck and a Sapphire Steel control ramp deck. But now I've also like thrown in Ruby Amethyst, which is a control deck, and Amber Steel, which is kind of a mid-range type thing. And I just can't figure it out because there's so much of because nobody plays here, so I don't know like what the meta is. I don't know what anybody's gonna fucking bring. I don't know who all is gonna come from wherever and bring what.
They're gonna be playing Necropotence, and they're gonna be playing Fires of Yavimaya, and you're gonna be like, what the fuck are these cards? And they're magic cards.
I understand that those are words. I just don't understand them in
I was
that
speaking in
order.
I was speaking in a language you've
Yeah.
never.
I will
you-
say
you've
rock,
heard
paper,
tacitly.
scissors is usually how, that's how Magic too. That's usually.
Everyone knows they're going to be playing Titans. That's it. Just Titans.
Yeah. Well, if they do, I'll have a good time because I can deal with that.
Yeah.
With any of those decks.
You're gonna
But
drop hammers on them.
But yeah, that's the problem.
space.
It's like the things that I'm most comfortable with have like a couple of things that beat them. That's very hard to come back from. And then
Of the things that are of the like different like decks that are like floating around, is there one that you are afraid of seeing that you absolutely don't like playing against?
it all depends on like what I'm playing. Like if I'm playing
That's fair.
Amber Steel, if I'm playing with it's called Steel Songs because it just has a whole lot of songs that you sing. If I go up against Ruby Sapphire, like that's a really hard matchup for that. Most other things I can kind of deal with. Maybe Sapphire Steel isn't good with that, but then Ruby Sapphire kind of deals with a lot of steel decks. I feel comfortable. I feel really good. Like that I feel comfortable with most matchups. But if anybody brings like an aggro deck, like a really fast moving deck, that's a slow. The Ruby Sapphire is super slow, so like it's really hard to like. They're usually so far ahead. So
is there
like,
a sideboard?
No.
Okay, so the cards you bring, are
the cards you bring, or the cards you have.
That's the main difference. Is like the card pool is so small currently because the game is still new that you don't have like enough, like a lot of removal or board wipes. Like in Magic, since it's been around forever, like typically control decks almost always beat aggro decks because they'll almost kill you, and then they'll get to the point where like, oh man, you're like at 2 or 3 or something like that. Then it's like board wipe. Board wipe, but Lorcana doesn't really have that. So
yeah, well, the Ruby Sapphire, if you can get to a point where you can stabilize with the board wipes, you can deal with it. But oftentimes, like they move fast enough to where it's hard to get that. So I'm still trying to like play a lot on Pixelborn to try and figure out like what the hell I'm going to play. I have no fucking idea. So I'm just trying to figure that out. So hopefully by the time of the championships, I will have something figured out. I don't fucking know. At least I don't have to like look for any, like everything that I want to play, I have the cards for it. I'm technically down like a Maleficent Dragon, but like I can run 3 in pretty much everything. It's okay. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Jody.
I've been all right. I've mainly been playing a lot of Dead Cells. The game went on sale this last weekend, and I think it's still on sale for like $12.50, which is half price.
Dead Cells is pretty fun.
I played it a lot when I had like when they first did the triple tier thing. They started doing that like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago for PlayStation. The second tier, it was because of the sale I got the monthly on. It was only like $10 more or $15 more for a whole year, so I was able to play the game without actually owning the game. And then that ran out, and the game was always $25, and I'm not paying $25 for an indie game unless it's the best indie game of all time. And Dead Cells is really good. It's probably one of my favorite Metroidvanias. I know, like Jay likes Curse of the Moon a lot.
Bloodstained Curse of the Moon.
Yeah.
I like it. That's actually just a Castlevania game.
Yeah,
like that's like a Castlevania 1, 2, 3. Well,
Right.
excuse me, Castlevania 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, those games are pretty rad. I've been playing a lot of Dead Cells, and I did something else, but I can't talk about it because it's a secret. And I did something else, but I can't talk about it because it's a secret. So I've got
Are
2.
you CIA?
I've got 2 now. I've got 2 things I'm working on that I can't talk about.
Jesus Christ.
And actually, the next thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to have to hold off for later in the show. So there you go.
Jody, the man of secrets.
He's actually not holding off for later in the show because it's its own separate show.
I'm talking about the other 2 things.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any
things.
secret things you want to add, Ethan, right now?
I have the one thing we're going to discuss later, but
well, then we might. Oh, you do have something else though. Okay.
Jody talking about Dead Cells reminded me that I've been playing Slay the Spire recently, and so I'm having a lot of fun with that. And I can't really think of anything else, but
it doesn't matter what you can think of.
Oh God, they're here. Hey everybody, Future Jay here. So what you just heard is the invasion of Whiskey and Wrestling. Yes, Jason Holder, co-host on the Whiskey and Wrestling podcast, came by and we talked about WrestleMania 40 for over an hour. It was actually a really fun discussion, and it is already up on the web, which you can check out. It is the bonus episode that precedes this one. So go to that, or you can wait and you can go to that later. It's up to you. You have full freedom as far as how you do this. And we're just going to get back to the regular episode. See ya, like right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by and being passengers on the Omnibus tonight. If you'd like to leave feedback regarding the trip that you've taken with us tonight, travelers on the omnibus at gmail.com. Again, that is travelers, 1L, on the omnibus at gmail.com. Jody, how else can they get in touch with us?
Spotify. Messages directly on Spotify.
There you go. Yeah, and take part in our polls.
Yeah,
Available on all episodes except the second. I didn't do a poll for the second.
fine.
It will remain with me for the rest of my days. But there you go. And also, if you like what you hear and you want to spread the word to other people who do not listen to podcasts on the same channels you listen to, we're available on Spotify, Apple, Google, formerly Google, and still technically Google, but it's YouTube Music and Amazon. Same.
No feedback?
No feedback this week. Thank God. I don't think I can handle it with all the recording we've done tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brady Davis is going to take us over for our main topic.
So we were sitting around trying to figure out what we should do for an episode, and we were like, you know what, we're not enough of. We're not pretentious enough. So we decided to get really, really pretentious and watch the movie Stalker. Which is a Russian film from 1979 by one Andrei Tarkovsky, who is probably the most well-known Russian filmmaker. This was his last film out of the USSR. After this, he left the USSR and didn't make another film there ever again. There's a lot of this is one of the super troubled productions that makes kind of a really, I don't know, it's a great movie, but I think some people are going to disagree when we talk about this.
This was the film you see is the third attempt to film it.
Yeah, and we'll as we go through we'll talk about that. But yeah, this is also the film that might have killed Andrei Tarkovsky and several people in the crew.
So I'll lead off with that. So the third filming of this took place in Estonia, next to a paper plant, and the first filming of it. The first reel of this that was ever filmed was filmed a year and a half before the third one was, and all of the film came back green. Probably because of a chemical processing that they were not ready for, because this was a new Kodak style of film. The same style of film that they filmed Star Wars and Blade Runner and a bunch of other movies on.
Tarkovsky at one point had said that somebody sabotaged this film, some other filmmaker.
Well, no, specifically he thought the cinematographer for the one.
Yes. And other people are saying, or have thought no, it's probably because that just the Russians this was a new film stock and they didn't know how to properly.
And it wasn't just Russians. There were other film companies that got this stock, and it had this kind of. I think there is some level of copper in that film stock because it all came back green, and it's the same kind of oxidized green that you see the copper oxidizes to. So I think that might have been a problem. The YouTuber Cinema Tyler, who was a resource after watching the film for me on this one. They mentioned that one of the reasons you can't people say, hey, we would like to see this original one. Does it still exist? Because color correction exists. We might be able to fix this. And no, because all of the stock was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So
that sounds about right.
Yeah, we have stills from the original shooting, but we don't have the film anymore.
And yeah, his original DP Rurberg was his last name. There was a lot of friction during the filming, and it ended up with him being replaced.
One of those things was so Tarkovsky's wife wanted to be the wife of the stalker in the movie, and Rurberg said, "It's okay, when are we bringing in the real actress?" Playing it like this was some sort of weird practical joke on him, and it was that didn't go over too well.
Yeah.
Rurberg was his director of cinematography for The Mirror.
Yes.
And in his autobiography, Rurberg says, Andrei made a movie about himself, and I made a movie about myself, and it just so happened it was the same movie, which I think is why The Mirror for them worked, and why Rurberg had to be out after the first cut of, or at the first time the filming of Stalker happened.
So that's just a little bit of background. This is a movie that is pretty lauded in cinemaphile circles. This is one of the more well-known Russian films, well-known sci-fi films, foreign sci-fi films especially. So there's a lot of praise. Tarkovsky also did the original Solaris, which was his response to 2001: A Space Odyssey, because he felt like 2001 was like super cold and emotionless, and he wanted to bring emotion back to sci-fi, so he did Solaris.
He also mentioned clean and why he wanted to make his movie look like a broke down truck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we start off. This takes place in a Russia, basically, but it's never called Russia. In fact, we never even know anybody's name. Really,
a nondescript Eastern Bloc country.
Yeah,
we don't know what time period this is.
Yeah, we
either.
don't know what time period it is.
It's just known as an undisclosed time period.
We get an opening crawl
area.
saying that
we get a Star Wars crawl, the most Russian Star Wars crawl ever, because it was in typewriter font.
Yeah, telling us how they think that like a meteorite crashed in this area, and it became what's known as the zone, where weird things happen, and it gets cordoned off and put under guard.
Well,
give me a second. I'll find the.
So
quote,
this is based off of a book called Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. They actually wrote the screenplay for Stalker, and uncredited in that screenplay is Tarkovsky himself, along with Arseny Tarkovsky, who was which is Andrei's father. And whenever there is poetry, except for the last poem in the movie, he wrote the poems.
I saw there was credit. There was side credits for the poetry that was used. Also, really quick, what was another thing interesting? Just like the way they do titles for this movie is that you have that Star Wars kind of introduction or whatever, and then it goes Stalker, and then you get all of the credits for everybody in the movie, and then it says Stalker again.
Yeah.
And that happens later.
And then an hour into the movie, you see Stalker again.
Chapter 1 ends Stalker.
Yeah. This
the significance there is, first of all, Mr. Tarkovsky, if you are in director heaven, thank you for that, because at that hour mark, I was able to pause the movie. I was able to put my laundry in the dryer. I made myself a cheese sandwich, and I came back to the movie. I was very grateful for that, because as someone who can't go through 2 hours, more than 2 hours sitting down in a movie, it was a very good break. I appreciate it. It was a very nice.
Yeah, older movies like that would have intermissions and stuff like that. A good something to also think about. We talked about the two guys who wrote the book and everything. From what I read, the second. When they did the second shoot, basically a lot of things changed, and that's where it diverged from what the book actually is. It became a lot more meditative and philosophical with that reshoot. So yeah, you get this. It's almost like a moving painting with the credits going over it. Do you have the thing?
I got the quote.
Okay, this is the opening crawl.
Yeah. What was it? Did a meteor fall down? Was it a visit by citizens of the vast space? So or otherwise, in our little country appeared the greatest miracle of miracles, the zone. We sent there the troops immediately. They did not come back. Then we surrounded the zone with police cordons, and I suppose that was the right thing to do. Actually, I don't know.
And from what I read in the book, there's multiple zones all over the place, and they were. It is specifically said that it's because aliens visited those areas. They keep it very. Everything is ambiguous in this movie.
Yeah. And also just to go back to Roadside Picnic, the stalkers basically bring people in, and they can bring people in, but normally they're just going in there to find alien artifacts and bring them out and to sell them. Because the notion, what they end up coming to the realization of was, this is basically alien garbage. They came here to have a picnic, and they left their pie crumbs and things around here, and we look at it like it's fucking treasure, because they are so beyond advanced of us, and so it's
these are otherworldly artifacts. That
there's philosophical commentary in Roadside Picnic, but I believe where that was kind of more general to the state of humanity. I think Tarkovsky was wanting to tell a very personal story about these three gentlemen who I will argue are actually Tarkovsky. One of them being the creative, the one guy being the kind of the logical thinker, and then the one person just being the blue collar worker,
the drunk.
Yeah, a lot of people have talked about this being a religious allegory because Tarkovsky was a very religious man, but he also believed in psychics and weird shit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also because Tarkovsky had a lot of problems with getting the movie as he shot it and as he wanted it to be seen by a wide amount of people, because this is the Soviet Union, so censorship was a big deal,
Right.
And he was kind of getting fed up with that, but he was also like doing things like buying a new house in another part of the Soviet Union and things like that. So he wants to leave and go, but he also wants to stay, and it's kind of an allegory for that as well. There have been talks about this.
So this movie starts in like sepia-tone.
Yeah, sepia tone, but like the ugliest, nastiest,
it
like
is
piss yellow sepia tone.
The first note I wrote on this, sepia tone, the color of desolation.
Oh yeah, this is like
very, very
I saw
depressing.
it, and I immediately knew, like, Jay's gonna bring up the fact that it's in the sepia tone.
yeah.
I brought it up though.
So the whole time,
But when I'm watching,
I'm just
in the
being
beginning,
pedantic.
like in the beginning of the movie, and it changes towards the end. It goes back and forth. but
Right.
in the beginning of the movie, like it's all in this just disgusting tone. Like there is
rust filter.
everything looks so disgusting.
Right.
To be honest, most of this movie, but especially when we're outside of the zone, it has this yellowish sepia grading. Sepia isn't even right, because the sepia to me is more brown, but this is like more yellow.
Right.
And when the credits roll, like the first thing I thought was like it kind of looked like a painting, because it shows this like bar, and this
Right.
guy like standing at this like high table.
Right.
And the music kind of felt like something that would play over like a Tolkien scene almost. So it was weird. The music is very interesting in this. And then we cut to the Stalker's house. We never know his name. It's just the Stalker.
Right.
we cut to the outside of his bedroom looking into
Oh
it.
yeah. Then there's
And
this,
it
there's
is-
this zoom,
Pan in.
and it's gross. Like everything is fucking
I
gross.
saw it, and this is something that Jigsaw would willingly sleep in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this is some of this is this is an old movie, and some of this is just I think this guy's style.
The long take.
The long.
Right.
So the average shot length of this movie is 88 seconds. That is
Jesus.
an eternity
Right.
today. Like nobody would shoot a shot this long.
Right.
But I also feel like this is like David Lowery, who did The Green Knight. I think he took a little bit from this, because his style is these slow, these panning shots and these slow zoom ins and things like that. He really likes his zoom ins. He likes to linger on stuff. We linger. There's a bed, and we got the Stalker, his wife, and then his daughter in the
Child
middle.
in the middle.
The Stalker gets up.
Very
slowly
trying to sneak out.
He puts on his pants. Like we see like they don't cut to anything.
Right.
Like we see him putting on his pants real slow and sneaking out. Then he goes and starts brushing his teeth, and his wife wakes up and she's like, "Fuck, are you going out there again?" Like. There's 10 minutes before anybody speaks a word in this movie.
Yeah, he was being quiet but not being quiet
Yeah.
at the same time.
He put his shoes on in the bedroom. Like, mistake.
Yeah. That was his first mistake.
Yeah.
But I saw those floors. I would have put my shoes on too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's throwing a fit.
She's
she
not
doesn't want
happy
him
at
to
all.
go.
Like, he's gonna go to prison again.
Yeah,
He's
she
gonna-
mentions that
It's
he's
implied
been
that
there
he's
for
been-
5
yeah.
years. It's going to be 10 years this time.
his daughter's not even gonna know who he is.
Yeah. They tell her that her nickname is Monkey. I'm assuming that's her nickname. I
Right.
don't fucking know.
Birth
Right.
name Monkey.
Birth name Monkey. So, and then he leaves, and we get his wife being super dramatic. She starts
Writhing on the floor.
writhing on the floor
Like,
while
you
they.
bastard.
And also again holds on the shot.
Yeah.
Right.
For way
For a
longer.
long
Yeah,
than
it
would be,
is
yeah.
so
It
uncomfortable. to
feels
watch.
uncomfortable for
which
sure.
which I think is what
Purposefully.
Tarkovsky is
And
doing.
something
Yeah.
that he does several times when you're outside the zone is there is the sound of a train going by, and then this like very patriotic U.S. Soviet Union sounding music starts playing, and I'm like, are they playing this out of the train? Like, is there
Yeah.
just a train riding by that's
Right.
just playing this fucking music? Because it happens several times. I'm sure that means something. I didn't look that close into it.
Maybe it was a concession to get the film made, because You see them flouting the rules, especially like in the approach to the zone, and it's like we're smugglers and all these other things. Like it's very in Soviet in that.
Right.
It's like I don't care how much control you think you have, we're going to be able to do this.
So yeah, you get we meet our second main character, the writer. We never know his name. He's like hitting on this chick and
I think this one's the professor.
No,
this
that's
is
the writer.
the writer.
This is the writer.
This is the writer. The professor's already at the little bar place.
Right.
And he's like sweet talking her and is like giving her this little. So there's a lot of like philosophical soliloquies in this talking about the nature of life and shit.
Yeah.
Super fucking Russian, existential as shit. So he's like, yeah. And then the stalker comes out and was like, yeah. Here's this girl. She said she'll go with us too. She's very brave. And the stalker's like, get the fuck
out of here.
Kick rocks, bitch.
Yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here.
And
She's
she
like,
gets in her little fancy car.
I've already got to take care of this writer. I don't need to take care of you two.
It's like, fuck you and your car. We've got a car all of our own.
we continually find out that the stalker knows a lot about the zone and knows all the little rules of the zone, but he doesn't tell you until like the last possible second about any of these fucking rules. The band is kind of maddening.
Yeah.
They
I would argue he doesn't. He thinks he does.
That is possible. Yes, that is possible.
Yeah.
So they meet the third character, the professor, at this bar
From the opening credits.
From the opening credits. The writer's like, hey, let's get some drinks, and the professor's like, hey, we probably shouldn't be drinking because this is pretty dangerous what we're doing. And the writer's like, okay, well, I'll just get a beer.
Yeah.
This was funny because until very recently, I think in the 2000s, beer was not considered an alcoholic beverage in Russia. So it was very, very funny. I was like, oh, I get that. So yeah, they start like talking about like why they want to enter the zone. The professor's saying, oh, mine's for research. The writer says, oh, it's for inspiration. Because we find out that in the middle of the zone there is the room where you go in and it grants your deepest desire.
Right.
So we're kind of started thinking like, oh, you go in and you say, hey, I want this thing.
I want riches. I want fame.
Yeah. I want somebody who died to come back. That'll be very important. We find out it doesn't work like that, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to that later.
But you see, the three of them are talking around the table, and the stalker is in the middle, and they do a really interesting thing where they zoom in as they're talking more and more about the zone, and you see the stalker just getting more and more uncomfortable.
Right.
I thought that was a very interesting shot. Then he finally says like, "Hey, come on, let's go." So they get into this truck and they're just driving the fuck around, avoiding
Jeep. Yeah.
In this Jeep.
Yeah.
They're avoiding the police.
And I was like, you're thinking like, oh, they're just gonna sneak in. No, they're fucking waiting for some reason, and and one of them asked like, hey, why has this happened? There's a train that goes kind of into the zone,
Right.
and they're like, why the fuck does it do this? And the guy's like, oh, it doesn't go all the way in. I don't fucking know. So and it's not like a full like train. It's like one engine, and so they wait till the engine
one car behind it,
and the one car behind it,
holding some sort of like what looks like porcelain,
like Tesla coils,
coils or something.
Maybe something that goes on like
because they shatter when they get shot.
Yeah, they get shot because the way they get into the zone is they drive it around and wait to get behind the train, and as the train comes through, and they open up the
gated section of the
gated section, they just drive the fuck through.
Right.
They legitimately Tokyo drift for a moment.
Well,
It's crazy.
Also, because it's like muddy and nasty and shit. Before
they get to that part, they drive through another gate, and the guy like holding the gate open like runs off. And there's no payoff for that.
Well, the guy's just like, oh, they got through. Oh, well, let me close this gate.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because it probably is. He's going to get in trouble if he mentions it to anybody.
Right.
Like, say, hey, they got through the gate. Oh, that was your only job, comrade. And then he's in jail. No.
We get a moment where they have to pull the Jeep into this building before this. and the writer, the stalker makes them do every fucking thing.
Right.
So he makes like them get out and start looking around to make sure that nobody's around. And the writer kind of goes like, "Hey, I lied. I don't really know like why I'm doing this."
Yeah.
So they just barge through the front gate and they start shooting at them. It is a miracle that nobody takes a stray bullet.
This is from the beginning of the movie to where we're getting at now. It's like 20 minutes, something like that.
We're going through this, but like it is a very slow.
Takes a long time.
I want to say this is at the 30-minute mark.
Yeah.
It could be.
I don't think it's quite there, but
by
but
2025,
it's pretty far into it. Like it takes them a long time. So yeah, they like they finally get in there and they get shot at and they're still having to like they park the Jeep, and again he's making the writer and the professor like go out and every once in a while they're in the like this destroyed building.
It looks like an empty factory or something.
It's like an empty factory or something with like a wall and with empty windows, and like every once in a while like a window will get shot through and they'll have to duck, and they finally make it to this little bitty rail car.
Yeah. Little tiny thing.
Yeah, so they get they fill it up with gas and then they take it and then they just start and they slowly just ride this thing into the zone.
It takes them a good minute.
It starts cutting from, okay, here's the stalker, now it's the scientist, here's the writer, back to the stalker, back to the scientist.
Yeah, they just like so to where they're all sitting there quietly, all looking like what the fuck, like
they're riding into the zone.
Yeah, the word immersive, I don't think can be said enough for Tarkovsky, it's particularly in this movie. It's like one of the reasons why you have these holes is he wants you a part of this, and you have to get comfortable with it, particularly with science fiction stuff, as really the science fiction stuff hasn't really hit yet, except maybe a little bit of kind of the dystopian nature of we have walled off this entire area. And we only let certain things get through, and then
also though, like you are like, for me personally, like I felt like I am like immersed in everything that's happening, and I know there's a reason for it because things are like brighter and you have
everything's a shade of piss yellow.
You go from that like sepia tone piss color film quality to bright green.
Yeah.
Like it's a knee jerk reaction almost.
Yeah, this is a very
almost
drastic
Technicolor.
Right.
And in my notes I wrote, this is the Wizard of Oz moment.
Yeah.
Like, but instead of like you've been sitting in this for a while, and then you're gonna sit in the color for a minute. Where really in the Wizard of Oz, you have this slow transition over into the color stuff. Like they open the door slowly, and then all of a sudden here's this colorful world. No, it's sepia, full on color.
Yeah, it's very, very drastic. I wrote that in my notes. It is a very drastic change, and you get like it's very gorgeous and luscious. Like, one of the things that like hit me is to me, and I could be wrong about this, but my thought was like, man, all of this like color part, if you showed this to somebody, they might not be able to tell that this is like a movie from 1979,
right?
Because it is so like crisp, and even like older movies from that time that are like very well regarded still kind of look. They have a little bit of there's something about them that feels a little old, and like nothing about the look of this part of the film looks old to me,
right?
I would be hard pressed. You know, I might be alone in that feeling, but that's kind of how I felt.
They have like a short exchange when they get to the zone.
You also have the stalker. He gets there and he like, I'm home. We're frolicking. He literally starts frolicking. Like he's like, hey, I got to go down here for a little bit. And he like lays.
I'll be back. I'll be back in like 10 minutes.
The stalker is never happier than this moment when he enters back into the zone. And if I'm not mistaken, we find out later that like this used to be like his home.
Yeah.
Before whatever happened to make it the zone. So he like lays down and they're just kind of just sitting there like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, they have a little talk and
yeah. We find out for some reason the writer knows a lot of things, or was it the professor? I can't remember which one. The professor.
I
they both know a lot of things.
I took that as meaning the professor had been to the zone at least multiple. Like as far as experience with the zone, it was Stalker, then the professor, and then this was the writer's first time.
You could definitely tell it was the writer's first time.
And he tells us like, hey, the stalker, he went to jail, and he called his daughter a mutant. He said her legs don't work right.
Well,
Like,
specifically
she
a
has-
zone
A
mutant.
zone mutant.
She
Yeah.
has some kind of deformity.
Yeah, and we find out later that like stalkers, like if they have children, their children are always something's wrong with them. Something's weird.
I took it literally, and it's not the case later, that she had no legs.
Yeah,
And
he
it's
says
like,
she has no legs, and it's just that her legs don't work quite right. The
Or
stalker,
really at all. You never see her walking. Like
yeah,
the one
well,
time.
she has. She does.
Does she have the walker?
She has
you never
crutches.
see her on the crutches, but you see later
Okay.
she's sitting there, and you see the crutches
which
beside
is
her.
weird because in like the trailer poster, it has her on crutches.
Yeah,
I wonder if Tarkovsky or whoever edited this looked at it and went, she doesn't look believable enough to be a cripple.
I mean, there's
And
possibility.
so we're just like, what I've got the shot of her on her father's shoulders
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah, there's no telling because her daughter never says a word.
Right.
So the stalker comes back, and then he starts talking about Porcupine,
Yeah.
Porcupine.
who was
His brother?
his mentor.
It was
Oh,
his
okay.
mentor.
Okay.
And
showed
Porcupine had a brother.
Porcupine had a brother.
That's right.
And we just know that like he taught the stalker everything that he knew. And he went in, and Porcupine went into the room, and he went. All that we know now is that he went into the zone without anybody, and he came back rich. And then he hung himself like
Right.
2 days later, 2 weeks later, something
Something
like
Eight
that.
days later.
8 days later.
yeah.
So yeah, we find out about that. So then they start, walking the zone. While they're waiting for the stalker, also the professor is like tearing strips of cloth and
Tying him to a bolt or a nut.
tying them to a giant bolt.
Yeah.
Which that was the reason why I felt he had been there at least more than once. Because he knows kind of the layout and the rules, but then he kind of forgets
because
about
the
it.
stalker talks of traps.
Yeah,
a lot.
I read that as like he told like the stalker was like, "Hey, while I'm doing this, you
That could be it
prepare
too.
this."
Also, yeah.
But like again, this is one of the most ambiguous movies that you will ever fucking watch.
This is one of the reasons why I prefer dubbed movies to subtitled movies. They have distinctive voices, but sometimes, and I think as the later movie goes on and you get accustomed to their voice, you know who's talking. But at the very beginning, you don't know necessarily who's talking.
doing
So
what.
who's saying
Right.
what can lead to
and
can lead to
Russian
some
is also
confusion.
like further from English than a lot
That's
of
also
other
true.
languages, so it's harder to pick out stuff. It's a little bit easier when it's something closer to English, like French or Spanish or something like that. But so they're walking through this like lush fieldish area, and as they go, this is very slow and ponderous. And I think one of the reasons why we're gonna find out that some of the people at this table didn't like this movie is because this movie is weird and this movie is slow. So it takes its time on everything. And they're walking, and what they'll do is the stalker and will throw one of these bolts, and then have one of them walk, and then have the other one walk, and then he will follow behind, and then whoever was in front will walk and pick up the bolt, and then
Because you have to walk a pattern.
You have to walk a pattern. You have to follow behind who the person is, because we find out in just a second that there are traps everywhere. We don't know what those traps are. The traps are very ambiguous. Like the threats of the zone, we never see super clearly and understand them.
Right.
And this is going to be something I'm probably going to do a couple of times. This can be compared to the movie Annihilation, which when you break down, it's very bare bones. People go into an area where things don't.
Isn't it called the zone? Oh no, it's called the Shimmer.
The Shimmer,
in
yeah.
Annihilation. Sorry.
You have like time dilation. You have
Weird things happen.
Yeah.
And the same thing. They go into this area where weird things happen. When you break it down like that, they're very similarly structured. But the thing about Annihilation is that the threats and what's happening there is very like it's explained. You might not fully understand how it works or why it works or anything like that, but it's explained and the threats are very clear. All the threats in the zone in Stalker are very ambiguous. And in fact, we get to a point where the Stalker is like, "Hey, the room is right there. Like they've been walking for just probably, you know, in real time, like an hour or so.
Right.
And the writer's like, hey, well, why can't we just walk to it? He's like, we can't go in a straight line. It doesn't work. We have to go this way.
Yeah.
And he points through like a tunnel of trees.
And then they have a little argument.
And the writer's like, well, I'm just going to go to it. Why the fuck can't I just go to it?
He goes, okay, sure. But if you feel weird at any point, or you feel like something's like looking at you or something like that.
But the stalker also kind of throws a fit, and he's like, you have to be
Right.
disciplined. Like you have to listen to me what I'm
Right.
saying. Although every single time almost the stalker never like, he just kind of takes the things that he knows or thinks he knows for granted.
Oh yeah.
So the writer just starts walking forward, and he's like, hey, just like Joey said, if something's weird, just come right back.
He walks like, I don't know, like a few yards maybe.
Probably about 50 yards.
Yeah.
Like he's almost to the thing, and then he hears him one of them call him.
Right.
And then we cut to the professor and the stalker, and they go, hey, did you call him? And the other guy's like, no, I didn't call him. So he comes back.
Yeah.
The writer comes back and he's like, hey, which one of y'all called me? Why'd y'all
Like,
call me
we
back?
did- we
and they're like,
did.
we didn't do that.
do that.
That was a trap.
Yeah. And then he was like, well, you're super lucky because the zone warned you. Like
Right.
usually it doesn't even do that.
Right.
So a point on this scene. So on his approach to the room, there's two shots. You have the wide angle from behind the professor and the stalker with him in the going away, and then you have the close up in. There's a tree in that close up that is way closer to him in the close up than it is in the wide shot.
Oh, okay.
And I think that wasn't a goof.
Right.
What I think happened there was Tarkovsky was trying to show that space and time,
Yeah.
this is how we're going to show that space and time in the zone doesn't work right. This tree, like you're over here and at a
Right.
distance, this tree looks way further away from him.
Yeah.
But in close up, it's actually right on top of
And then
him.
like
Yeah. All of these little things are like very, very
Right.
subtle.
right, except for one.
Yeah. Except for one.
Well,
Yeah.
well, like there's a point where they lose one of their party
Yeah,
members.
the
we get the-
professor
we get the
left
part
his
two.
rucksack.
right.
Yeah, we get the part two, which like I was not ready for. Also, So all of a sudden, it's like, why is Stalker appearing on the screen again? Like,
Right.
what is going on here?
We get this picture of like water, just nasty water, and something drops in. I was like, did somebody drop in the water? I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then they start walking, and you notice, like, I noticed, like, hey, where the fuck did the professor
Yeah, I
go?
thought for a second there that I disassociated and forgot I was watching the movie
Yeah.
for a minute. I'm like, did I miss something? Am I gonna have to rewind it? And as soon as I started realizing that, he's like, hey, where is
because the professor's walking, and he goes, well, wait, I need to go back and get my
rucksack.
My rucksack.
Yeah, he forgot his bag.
Yeah, he forgot his bag.
It's like,
Right.
and it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't.
Yeah,
You can't
Stalker's
go
like, you
backwards.
You
can't
can't
go
go
back.
back to the way you came. In fact, really quick, when they're about to start trekking into the zone, the stalker sends the rail cart back.
Right.
And they're like, and he's like, well, we can't go back that way.
He's like, yeah, what are we gonna do? He's like, we can't go back the same way we came in.
So you kind of find out that space kind of wraps around itself, and then they finally realize it's like, hey, where did he go? And the stalker's like, he's lost.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah. Lost cause.
Lost cause.
and
We
they
can't go back tomorrow.
They go around the area a little bit, and they come like by.
Well, before you mention
Oh,
that, they go in the dry
The
tunnel.
dry
Right,
tunnel. He's
right.
like,
Which
the
is-
stalker's like, hey, we need to go through the dry tunnel
yeah.
and go in.
Yeah, and this dry ain't it.
No.
Like,
No.
there's water pouring
Yeah.
from everything.
The writer was like, why is this the dry
Dry
tunnel?
tunnel.
Yeah.
You're lucky that like it's this dry. Normally you'd have to swim through this
Yeah,
part.
yeah,
Like what
He's
the
a local
fuck?
joke. And he's like, what?
What the fuck?
I'm like, if I was the writer, I would have punched him because it's like, I'm not in on the joke. What is this? What does this mean?
They come out of that. They start walking around. This is like one of the few times I'm going to interject. They come around this area or whatever, and there's like one of the nuts with the fabrics hanging up inside of.
they come through like this little like tunnel area.
Right. And he goes, "Ooh, watch out! There's a trap!" And then all of a sudden, there's the motherfucker just sitting there.
yeah,
Yeah.
with a bonfire.
With a bonfire.
Yeah, he's got a fire
He's got his
going.
rucksack.
He's eating a sandwich,
the
which
first
is probably
thing,
just like, God, his hands are probably so nasty eating that sandwich.
the way that scene is shot.
Yeah.
it reminded me of Dark Souls. Hang on.
The campfire.
Hang on. The Firelink Shrine in the original Dark Souls.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think of the color grading and how that ground looks. And I look at that and I see Dark Souls.
The stalker asks him, like, how did you get back? I just went to go get my rucksack.
Yeah.
He was just very nonchalant, like,
Also, this place looks exactly like the place that they just passed by before they went through the dry tunnel. So you're kind of seeing like, oh yeah, like space doesn't work how it normally works here. Then they decide to rest, which is like they chose like they just all lay down in just the nastiest places. Like one of them literally lays down with like this raised area all around water. And
And
I'm
you
like,
don't know if it's low tide.
and I'm
right?
like, what the fuck?
What?
Like, how?
Yeah.
This is a terrible. Like,
This-
oh my god,
this little splotch of moss. I'm gonna just
yeah,
lay
this
in.
little splotch of moss, and I'm like, oh my god. And then they all like, so I wrote here like, is every Russian a philosopher? Because they just all sit down and have this little
They're having like
philosophical
they're having
treatise.
they're having the philosophical conversation you would have when you were camping as you were falling asleep, fighting sleep.
Yeah.
It's like, what if the stars are closer than they need to be?
Yeah.
And you just keep talking.
But then also you'll have the part at like a campfire where it's like you're a stupid poopy head. You know, it's
Yeah,
they're
like
just
like
insulting each other.
the writer
Right.
and the professor are like bickering back
Right.
and forth. They don't like each other.
No.
Well, I think they kind of symbolize in this like if you want to get deeper, I think it's left brain and right brain. One is extremely logical, comes from a world that's extremely logical, and would eschew emotion over trying to get at fact and reason.
Right.
Whereas the other one is pondering the philosophy of everything, and it is literally the expression of art.
Yeah.
The inner
and
machinations
we
of
find
my
out that the
mind.
writer is apparently like a well-known writer and like is pretty well off.
Right.
I think that's what I got from
Yeah.
what he was talking about. So like he has a very different perspective than the other two. So yeah, so it was really weird because it's like, okay, the zone is so fucking dangerous, but you're just like, hey, let's just take a nap, guys.
We're just gonna-
let's just nap.
I think it also, like he had said before, like when you go into it, it changes you. And I think that it affects you while you're in it as well. Like it affects like everything that you would normally do. You wouldn't, do in other circumstances. You wouldn't just lay in a puddle of water and go
Yeah.
to sleep.
Either that or 6 p.m. is nasty nap time in Estonia.
Nasty
that
nap
could
time.
be. That
Yeah.
could be it too.
And
And then
they-
we get to sepia again. They dream in sepia.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
I mean, if you were in the USSR in the 60s and 70s, you'd probably dream in sepia too. So yeah,
That's my hellish nightmare. Just
Is this-
dreaming in sepia.
It's like,
this
am
the
I
first-
at
yeah,
the
that
bar
is-
again? What's happening here?
they meet the this is where they first meet the doggy, the good dog.
I think he met the dog in the dream.
I think the
Yeah.
dog. I think
well,
the,
it's very
or
very
he
hard to
dreams
tell
of the dog.
well,
what is a dream and what is not a
well,
dream.
the dog, like as Stalker's the one that's laying in the mud. As he's laying on that patch of muddy grass or whatever, you see, and you first hear the dog, and this is when they're all kind of chatting. You
Yeah.
hear the dog, and you see the dog coming up, and they're like, "Is the dog gonna eat him?
Yeah.
Is that what's gonna happen right now?" And then when he wakes up, like the dog's just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
So
And then they get to a tunnel, and the stalker just kind of looks at the rider, is like, "Hey, you got to go first."
yeah,
And the
Yeah.
rider's like, "I don't want to go down this shit. It's like a dark,
yeah.
disgusting."
I also want to stress something though, real quick. It's not that is basically it, but then it's like 30 minutes of short walking.
Yeah. Well, like he even like, okay, we'll draw lots. Give me 2 matches.
yeah.
Whoever takes the long match,
They go first.
they go first. So he has 2 matches because the stalkers doesn't go first on anything.
Right.
And he hands it to the writer, and the writer pulls the long match, and then he immediately throws the other match. I was like, wait, they were both the long match.
He
Got
didn't tamper
him.
them at all.
So,
Got him.
So they, it's just this long, slow, ponderous, but pretty. There was a decent amount of tension because you don't know what the.
I was
this
expecting
is
the
a-
xenomorph to
This
attack.
is a dirt. Yeah, this feels like something from Alien. This is a dirty, nasty tunnel. Like There's holes where water is just dripping through, and you're like, oh my god, this is so fucking gross. And the writer will just kind of walk a little bit, and then he'll stop and look back, and then they're both like looking over the edge and like slowly walking forward.
The stalker is hiding behind the professor.
Yeah, he's behind him.
The stalker never ever goes anything but last through things,
Right.
and so we find out like how the stalker actually survives all this. But it's just this slow thing, and like there's this. And where he keeps walking, and then they look back, and they finally get to a door, and the stalker is like as far away as he needs to be, and he's like, "Hey, you gotta open that door." And the writer's like,
I don't want
to open that door." And he pulls out a fucking gun. I was like, "Oh shit, he's got a gun! What the fuck?"
Yeah. You can't bring a gun into the zone.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah.
You can't bring a gun here.
Like this just got escalated very
You
fast.
just killed us all. Like we are dead because of this.
Hold
You
on.
have to put down the gun.
Escalated, yes. Very fast, never in Stalker.
No,
That's
nothing.
true.
Ever. He just pulls out a
in
fucking
this
gun.
movie's pace, this was
Yeah,
fast.
that's fair.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
you
fair.
pulled a long match. You got to go through the door.
Yeah, he was like,
Yeah, I only pulled one match. You threw the other one away. You
Yeah.
suck, fucking rat dick.
So he finally talks him into dropping the gun.
Right.
And he opens the door, and god damn, this is so fucking gross. He opens the door, and it's like
Yeah,
down the stairs, and then up some small down small stairs and up some small set of steps. And there's just water.
This is the most disgusting, like sewage water.
And he keeps walking down, and it's ankle deep, it's knee deep, it's waist deep, it's fucking shoulder deep. Nasty, just the nastiest water. There is no like clean. I think when the stalker fell asleep and put his hand in the water, that was the cleanest water, and that was just nasty, disgusting water. We also see there's a few times before the stalker goes into the water, he pushes the gun further down into the water. And there's several times I noticed, I don't know if this means anything, and I didn't look it up, but like there's several times during the film, especially in the water, we see these syringes. We even see we see a syringe on the bedside
That was
table.
early on. Yeah, in the bedroom.
But there's a couple of, we see it in the bedroom. We see it. There's a couple of times where they will pan past the water,
Right.
And
There'll be
you'll
a
see
syringe
there,
like an old-fashioned syringe.
yeah, like a super old. What may have been new back then. Who fucking knows?
True.
No, those things were fucking glass. That was like turn of the century Soviet, not even Soviet, Tsarina tech. Like, good lord.
So the writer is completely fed up with the stalker.
He's over this shit.
He's like, "Hey, I know that you gave me that they were both long straws, and you
wanted me to go
You
first.
wanted me to go first." And the stalker is just like, "Hey, this is great. You made it. We call that the meat grinder." It does not improve. It does not improve the writer's mood. The writer just makes it more angry.
Yeah.
You have already chosen the favorite of us two.
Yeah, he says, "Yeah, the professor. He's your favorite. He's the one that you want to survive. You don't give a shit about me."
Right.
And the rule of the room is, if two people want to go to the room, one person has to die in the meat grinder before accessing the room.
Yeah,
That's why I brought this bomb.
yeah. So they're sitting around in this like dilapidated building, still arguing.
Well, first of all, like this, I love the sand room.
Oh,
The
yeah.
sand room is so
Shit,
like
I forgot that we get.
that's the one part of this that's like where how did you get to this?
So by this, it's inside something,
I forgot.
and there's these giant concrete columns,
Yeah.
and it's like this sand in like
little
wavy, small
dune
dunes.
pockets.
And the professor and the stalker get in here. I think they argue after this.
The writer's like standing
The
beside
writer's like
some kind
halfway through.
like some kind
Right.
of like well.
Yeah.
Well, he's
thing.
standing at first, and then he says, "Wait, hold on, you're gonna die. We're gonna die too because of this somehow."
Right.
And then it cuts to he's laying down beside this well in the puddle of water. And then he stands up and has another philosophical treatise.
There's a lot of those. Yeah, we're not really going into those because there were a lot of them.
No, but okay.
most-
and my apologies for hitting the brakes on this. I want to talk about this one.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Because
Before that, we get like probably the most iconic shot of the movie where the stalker throws another bolt
Yeah.
and it hits, and then we see some like a hawk or something, like fly, and then it cuts, like it disappears, and then shows up further down and then lands.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the rider.
Yeah.
So we finally see like, okay, this is the weird shit that happens in the zone that's
Yeah.
not subtle.
Right.
Yeah. So the actor for the writer is Anatoly Solonitsyn, and he was a favorite of Tarkovsky's. I believe he was in The Mirror and also in Andrei Rublev, which are two other movies by Tarkovsky. And you said a soliloquy, which I think is a perfect thing here. But I also think this is a author insert and not the Strugatsky brothers. I think this is Tarkovsky speaking about the nature of art and about the nature of creation and the nature of creativity. And he took this moment inside here to kind of make a statement for himself. And I think the fact that he chose Solonitsyn as the actor to portray this character, I think this is my voice spoken through my most like regularly used muse or medium. So I think there was something intently personal in that soliloquy from Tarkovsky, and I think one of the things outlined in that is also his desire to get away from Russia, and specifically not Russia but the Soviet Union,
Right.
because I believe that it was tampering with his ability to create.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's a significant portion to this movie. While we have this moment here, I also want to point out Alexander Kadanovsky, who plays the Stalker, and Nikolai Grinko, who is the professor. And they have to, because they're the predominant screen time. But the three of these gentlemen really, through their own interactions, carried this movie.
Oh yeah.
This was 2.5 hours. I believe the intermission helped, but their interactions with one another keep this movie going, even when it is slow. And I greatly appreciated theirs. I also want to say, I think it was Solonitsyn who said the line "drying up like jellyfish in the sun," which I think was a very potent line. This was earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that out there because there are moments of metaphor in this movie, like spoken metaphor.
Right.
There, you have visual metaphor as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of spoken metaphor.
But the lines in this, I think one of these characters had to be a writer in order to be able to validate those things going there. I think you could have a regular person say these things, but when one of the people you're portraying or is significant to the plot is really a simple man.
Yeah.
Stalker is a very simple man with one very unique set of skills,
Yeah.
which you question whether or not he has them throughout the entirety of it, because you said, why would he have to be the one to wait while everybody else is going force before him?
And it could also be the nature of the zone, since it changes so much, or at least he tells us that it changes so much that like he never 100% knows what things are going to happen.
Yeah, he's not 100% positive that he's able to direct and guide everyone.
He kind of has to go on feel.
Yeah.
And then the other character is so scientific method. He is a scientist.
Yeah.
He is a professor. I don't think they ever hammered down what type of science until the very end there.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to have a 20 kiloton nuke on you at all times.
Yeah,
Which now you understand why he had to go back for the rucksack.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and he's also, when he walks through the water, he's like holding the rucksack above his head. So yeah, then they get to like this dilapidated building. We don't know how they got through the dunes. We sometimes we just don't know how they get through there.
Lisan al Gaib. No, anyway, moving on.
He is the Lisan al Gaib. We see we find
Voice of the outer world.
we find the doggy again.
Doggo.
The doggy is next to a skeleton, which we linger
Two
on.
skeletons.
Two skeletons.
skeletons.
I only saw the one.
It was from what I could see, it was like a male. A male and a female skeleton kind of like embracing each other.
Okay. And then they're in this room in this dilapidated building arguing, and then
Before the meat grinder.
No, this was after the meat grinder.
That was after the meat
Okay,
grinder,
gotcha.
yeah.
They're arguing because the writer's kind of just like, "Hey, I'm done with this shit."
Right.
And he's like, "Hey, okay, calm down." And then the phone rings. I was like, "What? What the fuck?" And all of them are just like, oh.
Yeah, they're sitting around, the phone rings.
Like the writer is arguing, picks it up, is like, "What? There is no lab here." And then he hangs the phone up, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Nobody's like, why is this phone ringing? Everybody's just like, oh, there's a phone. Of course the phone works here.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah, the professor picks up. Let me see this.
Soviet ingenuity that this phone works. So they're arguing. Then the professor picks it up again.
Yeah.
And calls someone.
Yeah.
And we find out it's a colleague. And he just says like, hey, fuck you. I found it.
Right.
And I'm almost there.
Yeah.
And the guy on the other end is being like,
I have this secret from Building 4.
yeah, I have the secret from Building 4. So fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he ends it with like, you will be discredited as a professor.
Yeah, the guy's like, hey, this is gonna ruin you. Fuck you. So then they hang up, and then the stalker's like, oh, by the way, the room's right there. The room is just we're right there.
We're on the threshold.
We're
of
on
it
the
right now.
threshold of the room, and they were like, oh, okay.
Time to philosophize.
Yeah. So the writer stands around and is like, oh man, I don't think I'm gonna go in, guys. I don't even know like why I wanted to be here.
Right.
Like he doesn't even know what he desires.
What he
most.
desires,
Right.
because we kind of get this is where we get that they kind of come to the realization that it's not that you don't just go in and say, hey, I want this, and it gives it to you. It looks deep inside you to whatever your deepest desire is, regardless of what you say it is,
Right.
and gives that to you.
Yeah, they start talking about porcupine again.
Because somehow the writer figures out that Porcupine
Porcupine didn't come alone.
went in to save his brother,
Right.
and he said that was his deepest desire, but what the room gave him was being rich, and that's why he killed himself. He couldn't handle the fact, and I got some of this, like I've read,
and
I've
even
read
there,
some stuff.
like it's even more powerfully delivered than that, because he said, you don't think he crawled in on his hands and knees begging the room to give him his brother back? Yeah, no,
And then it gave him
made him
riches.
riches, because that's what he actually wanted, and even he didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Right.
How could anybody actually realize what their deepest desires are?
So the writer comes to that realization, is like, I'm not going in there
Yeah,
because I don't
fuck
know.
that.
I don't even know what the fuck it will give me.
Yeah, right.
I do not know what my deepest desire is. Like
Right.
I have lived such because the stalker is constantly talking about like hey, you're good, especially after the meat grinder is like, oh, you're good men because you made it through. Like this is a good thing. Your soul is good. Right. And the writer's like, my soul is not good.
Yeah.
If I told you half the shit
Did
that
you
I've
not
done,
see that tart that I was playing around with?
yeah,
in the
if
start
I
of
told you half the shit that I've done, I would probably be killed when I went in there. Because the stalker is telling them like you have to be pure of heart and pure of soul. You have to be a good man,
Right.
But you also have to be unhappy to go into to come
There's a
here.
lot of really weird, like,
There's a lot of rules.
The rules
that-
don't fucking make sense.
right.
I don't think the rules are the rules.
It's quite possible
I
because
think-
everything we're getting is through the filter
Stalker.
of the stalker. So it's how he
I think the
interprets
zone
things.
is so indecipherable that even the people that are in there so
Yeah.
often can't decipher
Yeah.
what to make of
Which
it.
is why it's so dangerous.
Yeah. And
They
earlier
asked-
the stalker was like said that like it's forbidden for stalkers to go into the room. We can't do that. I'm sorry, I cut you off. What did you say?
Then it goes to the writer asking the professor, "What do you think your deepest desire is?" And
Yeah.
this is when he pulls out the device. And he's like, "Oh, what's that?
Here,
Is
I had
that
this little bomb."
some soul reading device you got there?"
He's like, no,
it's a bomb.
It's a bomb. 20 kiloton bomb.
I'm here to blow up the room.
because he is afraid of what men of evil
Yeah.
hands could accomplish when they gain access to
Yeah,
the
so he was with a group of scientists, and this is one of them is one of the guys that he called and talked to, where they decided that the room is too powerful of a thing to leave out there because
men.
anybody,
Yeah.
any evil person could go in there
Right.
and get whatever they desire, and it caused the doom of the world. But he said the more that they thought about it, they started to lose their will, and then they hid it from him again. But he found it, and he's brought the bomb here, and he's going to blow up the room. He's going to destroy it so that it can't fall into evil hands. And the stalker
Loses
does
his shit.
not like this because this is all that the stalker has.
Right.
This is how he lives.
This is
Yeah.
how he lives. He can't get a regular job. His wife was bitching at him about getting a regular job, but this is all he is. But it also is like the most important thing to him. Like, again, you think about like how joyful he was when he went into the zone.
Right.
Like bringing people here and being here in the zone is when he feels important. Otherwise, he has nothing.
Otherwise, his life is in sepia tone.
Yeah. His life is
Like
in sepia
it's so
tone.
bad when he's asleep, he sleeps in desolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he thinks of the room as a symbol of hope, and he yells at the professor, "You would destroy hope, the hope
Yeah.
of men."
And then
Yeah.
they basically start fighting over the bomb.
Yeah.
To where the writer helps the professor
Yeah.
fight off the stalker.
Yeah, the professor, I mean, the stalker keeps lunging for the bomb, and the rider pulls him off. Eventually, they just fight, and the stalker just makes himself so pathetic that the rider's just like, I mean, the professor's just like, fuck it, and he starts dismantling the bomb.
Yeah. The
In
stalker.
painstaking detail.
This is where we get to see like how the stalker really is.
Yeah.
Like his personalities is like he's a cowering fool.
Mm-hmm.
He's got no real wants and desires except for being in the zone.
Yeah, that's why he doesn't go into the room, because
Right.
there's nothing else that he wants.
He doesn't want anything else.
Like
Yeah.
there's nothing else that he wants, that he cares about. So he has
Right.
no desire even to enter the room.
Right.
And yeah, so they just kind of sit there outside the room.
And there's water falling.
In which
The rain falls and then stops.
rain and water falling.
That's a
and
long
shots,
shot.
And
Yeah.
it's a long take.
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
start and then they just kind
They
of move
back out and they pull in.
and they change the lighting and for the
To the point where I'm like, okay, this is where we're just going to cut to the title. Nope, we're back
Nope.
at the bar.
Yeah.
Nope.
and then it
Well,
cuts
they
to
also
some
before
fish.
this they cut to some fish in
Right.
the water, and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
this like oil going
Weird-
through the
yeah,
water.
yeah, that's right, that's
Because
right.
because the professor throws the timer.
Yeah.
Or the little, not the timer, but the I guess the code to start the bomb.
trigger.
The
Yeah.
trigger
Right.
for the
well,
bomb.
yeah, because he dismantles the bomb and throws it all in different spots in the room.
he dismantles the bomb and like into very tiny pieces.
Right.
It's really weird that this was a 20 kiloton bomb.
Yeah.
I feel like they just made that up.
Yeah.
And then we cut to, they're back at the bar. Everything's
Yeah.
back in sepia
Yeah.
town.
with the dog.
With the dog. I
dog.
was like,
Yeah.
the dog. They
Yeah,
brought the dog
they brought the dog back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then the wife shows up
wife's
like,
there?
He just tagged along with
Yeah.
us.
The wife's
like,
there.
what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Oh, he just tagged along.
he
Right.
just followed us.
She's like, does anybody want a dog? And they're like, no.
No.
Okay, I guess we have a dog.
And then the movie almost ends the same way it started.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
No, and then it goes back to color.
it goes back to color because
Right.
we are focused on
The daughter.
the daughter. We see
Monkey.
the daughter outside, and then they're walking back home, and the I think she's on the stalker's shoulders.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And we're focused on her, and it turns back to color.
Yeah.
And then we get back to the house, and it's back in sepia tone.
He
She
crawls back in bed.
she pours out this nasty ass looking milk
Yeah.
for this dog.
Milk and a bagged milk.
A bagged milk.
I don't think the milk would have looked as bad, but for the sepia tone.
Yeah.
Right.
The milk probably would have looked all right.
just
Most
saying-
of this movie probably would have looked all right without
the
that sepia.
stalker at this point looks like shit.
He
Yeah.
is.
He looks like dog shit.
Yeah,
He
he is-
collapses in front of a bookshelf.
Yeah. She makes him get up. We finally see, because we don't. It was really interesting because we didn't see these books before. We were like,
Yeah.
oh, there's books here. Like we just saw,
Right.
Like, oh, this isn't the same house that they were in before.
yeah.
Spoilers, this is the bedroom, the ugly
Yeah.
bedroom.
So she puts him to bed, and he just kind of laments that men have lost their faith. Like he really is like I think he feels bad because nobody went into the fucking room. He was like, I needed somebody to go into that goddamn room,
Right.
and nobody did it. Nobody had the faith to do it. Nobody wanted to do it. And he just like really like is sad about this and laments that like men have lost their faith and they can't believe in anything
And
anymore.
then that he's failed at his job.
Yeah,
to
he's
bring
failed
the
at his
faith.
job. This is where like the religious allegory is like the strongest. Like if you were getting hints of it, like this is where he takes out Tarkovsky takes out a fucking hammer and hits you over. Do you get it? Do you get it?
Feel the religion.
Feel the religion.
He even like said like those fucking elite scientists and celebrities like they
Yeah.
don't fucking understand. Only I understand.
And then we cut back to the daughter who is just kind of sitting there, and there's these three glasses.
Before that,
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
get to the wife.
Oh, yeah, the wife
talking to the
yeah.
audience.
The wife has another fucking.
Oh
she
yeah,
has
I
a
forgot about
soliloquy
that.
because she laments like, oh man, I love this guy and I knew what I was getting into and I knew that if we had children, they'd be fucked up children.
But I did it anyway.
But I did it anyway.
I wish I wouldn't have.
I wish I wouldn't have, but I did it.
Didn't she say at some point that I would rather live in this?
Oh yeah, she does. Yeah.
Yeah, I would rather live in this than like to live in like peaceful like. God, I can't remember, but she prefers this life to what she thinks the other life would
Yeah.
have been.
Right.
because of how much she loves him.
Also, the cigarettes that she's smoking, and then earlier, one of the cops has a patch that says AT, and that's Andrei Tarkovsky.
Oh, okay.
And then we get to
So,
the daughter.
and then the daughter.
This was the part that Tarkovsky's wife was supposed to have.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I wonder. The first soliloquy, I believe, is Tarkovsky speaking through like his
Through the writer.
through the writer.
Mm-hmm.
Is the second one Tarkovsky speaking for his wife about, because I can't remember what they call it. It was like the decade of suffering, but his 10 years up into the Stalker was the end of that.
Right.
And then he went to Italy and he made other movies, including
Yeah.
The Sacrifice, where he was filming a house burning down and the film jammed. So they couldn't record any of it. So they had to rebuild the house over 2 days and film it burning down again because he only brought one camera.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so this decade of just like, I can't even remember, but of just nothing but like heartaches and all of these things that he wanted to do and he couldn't do because of outside forces and all this. Is this him writing about his wife's experiences through that decade?
Could be.
And
Possible.
why like I would rather be doing this and create and doing what I loved doing and being with who I loved than to have picked somebody else and maybe have been content but had not had the way to express myself the way I've had in this. That's what kind of struck me from just watching it first and then kind of getting reinforcement of that from that. Again, I want to shout out YouTuber Cinema Tyler, his video on Stalker, which is on this, which I think was very good. Kind of gave me a few little insights that I don't even think that Cinema Tyler was necessarily going for, but kind of mentioned what was going on there. I highly recommend that. And just from other things that I kind of pulled from the IMDb page and the Wikipedia page, I think that's where you get to the very personal nature of this movie for Tarkovsky. I think he was a very, like, starting with The Mirror, but I also think in Stalker there was very personal things that he was throwing in these movies.
Well, the movie it's full of analogies already.
Yeah.
And metaphors. So that could be, something that's, pretty close.
I can't remember what it was. There's only been like one theory about this that Tarkovsky himself shot down, and it wasn't anything that we've talked about. But I can't remember exactly what it is. I should have wrote that down, but I didn't. So the gradient goes away again because we're focused on the child,
Right.
And my note for this is this is the most severe child I have ever seen. This is the most Soviet child. If you imagine a Soviet child,
Right.
the one poem that's being read here is not by Tarkovsky's father. It's actually
Okay.
by another poet. I can't remember the name of him. But yeah, it's wow.
Like this child has she does not smile. She has I can't even tell you what her hair color is because she's got it like wrapped up in this
Right.
like
she has
babushka looking thing.
The babushka hood.
I know babushka thing. That is grade A class 1
Babushka.
Soviet babushka.
Yeah.
And the only really visual science fiction that happens.
There's
Yeah.
the hawk stuff too.
Yeah,
Well,
there's-
yeah.
yeah. This is like where she
There's
just kind of
thing-
lays her head
This
down,
is the only supernatural
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
and this is in here because Tarkovsky believed in psychics. He believed in psychic powers and shit like this. But he was also a very religious man. It's weird.
So he was very pro. God damn it! Stabbed him to death with an ice pick, but he wouldn't die. Rasputin. He was pro
Rasputin.
Rasputin.
Okay.
I was like, that could be
Okay.
anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
who you're talking
Yeah, no,
about.
but no, he was very
I
like
forgot about the
Rasputin
stab.
number one.
I remembered all. I remembered all the stuff about Rasputin.
So for
except
like
the-
5 minutes, she moves glasses with her
so
mind.
there's these 3 glasses, and she just keeps moving them, and they just move with their mind. It's a pretty cool effect. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like it's they probably like put metal, like they probably did it with
Magnets or
magnets,
something.
probably.
I'm thinking it's
Yeah,
like
'cause-
magnets under the
Well,
table.
yeah, because there's you can't see a pull wire anywhere.
Yeah, there's no
in there.
pull wires or anything. And she finally just like pushes one off, and the movie ends.
Yep.
We also get the rumbling of the train.
Yeah.
And then I believe Ode to Joy is playing.
Yes.
Yes.
So that could mean a lot of things.
The one thing that kind of like stuck with me, and this has nothing to do with the movie at all. It is the daughter who we don't see hair on the child's head.
Yeah. She could be bald, yeah.
Could be bald.
Oh my
She
God,
is-
she's Professor X.
Oh,
You've got
shit.
to it. Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh man, he had to get that back because somebody stepped on his joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Got your bit stepped on.
So
Damn.
Stalker ends with a female Professor X.
Yeah, she's going to recruit the X-Men after this. A really interesting thing, at least in my, I watched the
If
Criterion.
she's Russian, wouldn't there be X?
Yeah.
X-Men.
Jesus Christ. Moving on from that, a really interesting thing is that like my copy I have this from the Criterion collection, and it just ended. Like that was it. Cut to black, into the movie. No end credits. I was like, oh man, that's cool because they did all their credits in the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is known as like one of those nightmare shoots. Like this is up there with like Apocalypse Now and a couple of Island of Dr. Moreau.
They had to film it 3 times.
Yeah, they had to film it 3 times, and there were times where they were knee deep in puddles of oil and runoff from a paper plant that was just upstream.
One of the few things to survive the first shoot, if you'll remember, like about they're in the zone and it's this river that has this red foam on it, and it looks like some say snowing, but it wasn't snowing. It's just kind of that was the runoff.
It looked like nuclear fallout. The
Female
snow,
members of the crew had rashes all over their face from it.
Yeah.
God.
So Tarkovsky dies in 1986. Him,
His
his
wife,
wife,
and Antonin
Verberg.
Verberg dies later though. He survived
but
a full decade.
But they all and the guy who played the writer,
Antonin Solonitsyn.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Anatoly Solonitsyn.
all die of like the same rare type of cancer, like
Yeah.
a not very common type of cancer. So a lot of
Gotcha.
people are like, this movie probably killed them because he shouldn't have been filming where he filmed,
Right.
because they didn't take any precautions whatsoever.
No.
And there were long takes where they were just like, again, knee deep in like chemical runoff.
Imagine how many times they had to walk through the shoulder deep of sewage water.
Oh, how many times? Yeah, because you see that once.
Yeah.
How many times did it have to be filmed and then choose the right one?
Yeah.
At least
Shit.
3. At least 3.
Shit.
Yeah. So that
Ethan, I don't say this a lot on this show because you do actually make them, but I'm gonna point this out. That was a very good point.
Yeah.
That was a very good point.
And also
Oh
probably
my
like no
God.
clean water to wash that shit off after they got out of
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah, like they were all like everybody is just the 3 main characters are just disgusting throughout.
Right.
I was like, man, at the end when he just
Even-
crawled, he
even in
crawled
this-
back in. He went straight from this place and
The
crawled.
same shirt, and
Same
everything.
clothes.
He crawled.
Yeah.
All he did was take off his shoes and his pants, and he crawled in. I was like, no. Now he did crawl on his wife's side. I did notice that.
No,
I
but
was-
then the whole bed is infected.
I was like, oh my God, do not crawl back into. Oh my God, what are you doing? There has to be somewhere to take a bath. There
At
has
least,
to be
at least
somewhere.
use the milk. Like, good God.
Even
Oh
then,
my
she
God.
couldn't pour the milk correctly. Got it on the floor.
That I think was intentional. I think that was like, okay.
She doesn't want this fucking dog. She's like, oh, we have a dog now. This is great.
Not just a dog, a zone dog.
yeah, a zone dog.
Who knows what that
So
thing's
this
gonna
thing might
do?
start fucking talking to them. Who fucking knows? They might wake up one night and just tapping them on the shoulder. Hey,
Hey,
there's some weird
I'm
shit
having
going
an
on.
existential crisis. We need to have a
Hey,
conversation.
so what is the meaning of life?
dog taps on the wife's shoulder. Hey, your daughter's doing some weird shit.
Yeah, did you see this? She can move shit with her mind.
I have to ask this question. Ethan, what did you think about the movie?
Oh, I did not like the movie.
Yeah,
no shit.
I did not.
No shit.
this is one of those. This is an important work of science fiction, but it's not a movie for everybody, and it's not a movie.
Would you
that
say
everybody is
that
gonna
out of
like.
all the movies we've pushed
Yes.
you through, this
Yes.
was the one you
Yeah.
liked the least?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But
hey, you can say you're cultured,
I understand the significance of the movie.
At least there's
I
that.
myself cannot and more than likely will not watch this movie.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
that's entirely like. So
It'll probably be 10 more years before I watch this fucking movie.
This is
again.
one of those films that you could. When these films were made around this time period, the art house ones anyway. They're not really meant to be watched more than once. I mean, you can study them and do all that and watch multiple times, but it's meant to have the impact it has on you when you watch it, and that's it. You've witnessed art, and now you can move on and witness art again.
Kubrick and Tarkovsky get compared a lot.
Yeah.
They do. And so much so that, it's like the American Kubrick and the Russian Tarkovsky, like they basically just I don't think you can perfectly swap them out. But as creatures of their block, Western and Eastern, I think like they're the
Well, they also were doing stuff at the same time.
And,
so
and they were
they were contemporaries of each other.
I've watched full on 2001 maybe 3 times.
Yeah,
It's
about
not
the same for me.
It's not a movie that you can like, oh, let's just pop it in the DVD player, or just like fire it up and we can have it on in the background. It's a movie where you have to invest your attention, and you have to invest your time. For me, and I said this before the show, but let me trumpet it here. There's 2 ways I like my science fiction: blistering fast or ploddingly slow. Because if it's blisteringly fast, it's because it's entertaining me and engaging me quickly, and we're going from shot to shot, person to person, things I think.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean it has to necessarily be bad. I think Annihilation does a better job of playing this up way quicker.
It moves at a quicker pace.
Modern beats
there are
and
more,
everything.
and I think
there are
you
more
get similar
interesting. This is interesting, and the Stalker is interesting in the way that like it gives you things to think about and things like
and
that,
cinematography and things.
cinematography and everything like that. Annihilation gives you more in the way of like set pieces and things like that. But I think it also, it also has a lot to say and make you think about stuff.
Yeah. I can understand why some movies are like methodically shot at a slower pace, so that way.
And this is just older movies. Again, this is a movie from the 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
And movies at that time were just slower. Like
Also true.
Most
I
movies in
would say there was that in that period of time you could even for that period of time though, this movie is slower.
Well,
Yes.
for sure.
But I think, let me just.
I think it's an Eastern Bloc movie, so that has a little bit to do.
And
with
to
it too.
capstone my point on this one too, I want, if it's not lightning fast, I want it to be as slow as possible so that I can immerse myself into this and feel like this. And that's one of the reasons why I think the long takes really work here more so than they would in any other kind of movie this night, because at the end, when it's the 3 of them sitting together outside of the threshold of the room that they're not going in, and the despair that each of them
if I'm not mistaken, the shot is from where the room is.
Yes.
So we're seeing them through the room.
All they've got to literally, all they would have to do is take 2 steps and they're in there.
Well,
Please let me finish this.
And then let me say something after he's done.
Yes, we're queuing up. We're literally in Eastern Soviet bloc right now. There we go. This has to be so. It's like the 3 of them are sitting. No, there's a 4th person sitting in there, and it's me. I'm in that room with them, and I feel what they're feeling, and you don't get that if that scene is 5 minutes shorter. It just doesn't. All right, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, we also the 3 of us, even though I haven't seen Stalker, I've seen other films by Tarkovsky and also other foreign films that are shot in a deliberate way like this. And going into it, I knew what I was getting into, because you don't have as much experience in these kind of art house films. You had no prep for what you were getting into. You probably had like a little bit of an idea, right? But if you were maybe more mentally prepared for it, it might have hit you differently. Also, I want to note that, like, yes, during this time period, a lot of movies were deliberately slow. However, this was starting to be the time period where, like, Hollywood, this is the Russian art film, but Hollywood you have Jaws, and then you have Star Wars, and those two big epic movies happen right before Stalker happens. A year or two before Stalker.
If I can say a weird Hollywood contemporary of this is I think 79. Yeah, I think it's
79.
No. But like the movie, I think it's 78 or 79. The Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Okay.
Yeah,
Of the Star Trek movies,
I believe it's 1980.
It might have been 80.
I believe it's 1980.
But at the very least, it's being filmed around the same time. Definitely. Star Trek: The Motion Picture is the slowest Star Trek movie.
79.
Okay.
79.
Yeah.
Okay, so literally the same year.
Right.
I think Stalker had an American release in 82, if I remember from my notes.
Probably.
But that movie, like we were 2 years off of Star Wars,
Yeah.
and they were filming that more like 2001 in that it's very clean sets, very slow moving, kind of kind of immerse you in.
Also,
I like the motion picture.
right.
I don't think Robert Wise was the right director for this because you can't go from West Side Story to Star Trek.
Also, Alien is deliberately slow in a lot of it was 79 as well.
It picked up a little bit.
Now, what helps there though is that's a horror movie, and that slow builds out that tension. And and Scott was
when
very
you have
good at
that,
paying off.
you have
that
like
tension.
a couple of different like story beats that pop the movie along.
Well, a lot of like when it comes to like sci-fi of this era, like you had basically, and you kind of said it, there were two kinds of sci-fi you could do in the style of 2001, where it is kind of slow and methodical, and then you could do it where it's like Star Wars, where it's like this is quick zappy, this is one of the old radio serials,
Right. Because even as cheesy as it is, I like it, but it's also slow and methodical. Forbidden Planet, is also in that kind of vein.
But I mean, like I said, I get that. I figured like Ethan's probably not gonna like it, and it's okay. Again, this is not a movie that I'm gonna watch all the time. This is not a hey, let me pop this in and think about this. It does do what I like movies to do, and gives you a lot to turn over in your head, so to speak, if that makes any sense.
Also, though, the thing is, like, as time moves on, I'm old as fuck. I've got to mention this. As time moves on, you have different options. So when I started discovering art house films, I was around Ethan's age. I was around like 22 to 25 when I started getting into those movies. But my options when I was like in that age bracket are like 30 years of movies have happened since then. So like, outside of like, Pulp Fiction and a couple of pop, like really good, like pop centric, like in the mid 90s, cinema was not good for the most part. Like there's a dozen movies, that people can think of like off the top of their head, but like depending on the year, it might or 2 years.
Well, the early 2000s were also ass too,
especially for horror movies. But like my options were like not what they are now. So like I didn't have 30 more years of cinema. The boy has like the birth of cinema to now, so I can understand. And also like people have video games and there's all kinds of things that like make your shit. My attention span is fucking shit. So my phone has destroyed my attention span. I literally like I had to like put my phone like away from me, so I was like, so I would stop looking down at my phone.
I achieve this by watching it on my phone. My phone can't give me anything else. There you go.
As Tarkovsky himself intended.
There you go.
Watch this on your phone.
Yes.
I had the unfortunate pleasure of watching this movie during the midst of a thunderstorm and hearing
that could have improved it, maybe,
and hearing near explosions around my house.
Damn.
And that was just Bianca.
I watched this movie in the best way you could possibly mentally prep for it after a very long and arduous day at work.
Yeah.
I did the same thing.
I came off. I know how I am, and I'm a really bad procrastinator.
Yeah.
How very Soviet of you.
I'm like, okay, it's the day before the show, right after work, take a shower, watch Stalker. Let's go.
Yeah, I had to prepare as well. I was like, well, I'm watching Zone of Interest Friday. so I'm definitely not watching.
I
Stalker.
didn't watch Zone of Interest because you'd given your recommendation for it. I didn't watch Zone of Interest because that would have already been like 10 tons on my shoulders.
Right.
And then the other 10 tons for the 20 kiloton would have been this movie.
Yeah, you
It's like I
don't
couldn't
need
handle that.
existential philosophy on top of fucking the Holocaust.
Right.
I would like to ask the boy one question before we start wrapping up.
Sure.
Okay.
If this had been subbed and not if this had been dubbed and not subbed,
Yes.
you would have preferred
Yes.
that?
Because reading, I don't mind subtitles, but when I'm having to read subtitles and it's taking my focus away from what's happening in the movie, where it's all about the zoners messing with the minds of whoever is entering
Sure.
there, it's taking me away.
Right.
It's taking me out of that immersion of the film.
And
of
there's
the
a lot of
movie.
diatribes. There's a lot of like flow
Yes.
of consciousness, like
Yeah.
word vomit that's
Exactly.
happening.
I can see that. I don't agree with it, but I
and-
can see it.
and-
I'm not gonna.
and especially in the beginning, because of I'm not matching voices with the person, and so I'm
Yeah.
having to decipher, okay, is the writer saying
that's
this line
fair.
or is this the scientist?
That's fair call.
Yeah.
That
And
part
so-
you kind of get over as you're watching the movie.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, at the especially when they're quote unquote establishing the rules of the zone, that could hurt the
Especially if
situation.
you're again not used to like watching movies with subtitles that have this much dialogue that
this
are
is,
not
This is a dialogue heavy movie. It does a weird thing of, show don't tell, but also it tells not shows sometimes, because like a lot of everything that like happens is kind of show don't tell, but when somebody just stops and like gives you a philosophical treatise, that's kind of tell don't show. I'm not saying that it's bad, because usually when somebody says, tell don't show, it's a bad thing, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just a weird kind of mix of how it does things. And there is a lot of like, again, like I keep using the word soliloquies, where they just kind of speak to whoever, and they don't even expect an answer or whatever. So yeah, but what's interesting, I think, is that this is like the first like older movie that we've made you watch where it's like, okay, I don't like this. The other ones, I think you said you pretty much you liked a decent
I
amount.
liked Casablanca. I liked Psycho. I liked The Warriors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I could say that.
So hey, we're we're on a pretty good track.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think with watching.
I don't mind people like I
and-
did like Stalker. I don't mind people not liking Stalker.
Yeah,
Right,
this
sure.
is. You would be insane if you like got mad at somebody who was like, I don't like this movie, because it does a lot of things that
well,
like
it's art.
people
It's
are not.
objective,
Yeah, it does a lot of things that people might not necessarily like. Again, like it's super weird,
Right.
it's super dense, and it's super
Obtuse.
obtuse, ponderous. Ponderous sounds more negative, but it's like slow, and those combinations of things will make it harder for me. It's not the most fun movie to watch. Again, it's probably gonna be a very long time before I even watch this movie again.
Right. And and also it's like, typically when you go into a movie, you're going to be entertained and to watch a story and watch things unravel. Very rarely are you going into a movie to like, focus on cinematography and philosophy. That's not always the case.
Yeah, you kind of have to prepare your mind for
That's
that.
what so if anybody mentions the term art house movie, that's what this is. That this is an art house movie.
Yeah. So yeah, does anybody have any final thoughts for
How
Stalker?
did the sand not get as wet as it should be in the sand?
How did anything not get as wet as it should be?
I know how. Lisan al-Gaib.
Of course, the Lasana al-Gaib is too humble to say he's the Lasana al-Gaib.
Thank you, Monty Python and the Life of Brian.
Oh,
He's the
Jesus
Messiah. He
Christ.
lost his shoe.
So yeah, that's Stalker. I will say, like, I've compared it to this a couple of times. If you like this kind of idea of somebody, like a group of people having to go into this weird area where like reality is bent in some way, I will say check out Annihilation.
Yeah.
Alex Garland is one of my favorite directors / writers. He's got a movie coming out this week called Civil War. I've loved all of his movies, but check that one out. it is a little. It's not as dense as this movie. It's not as hard to understand as this movie. But there are some, like our friend Eddie watched this movie with me, and at the end of it, watched Annihilation with me, and at the end he's like, I don't know what the fuck happened, but I liked it. So there is that. It's not. I'm not gonna say like it's the easiest to understand movie, but it is compared to this. It is. It does have like some striking visuals as well. They do it in a different way than this movie, and kind of the whole. Again, when you get to it, like what is actually happening in the movie is much more different. But it uses that same basic premise of people go into an area where like reality is not what it seems to be. I would say check that out. It's a really, really good movie. So yeah. So that's Stalker. Watch this movie and send us hate mail because you didn't like it. Whatever. Hey, it's what's the word that the fucking YouTubers always use?
Cringe.
No. Fuck it. Jody,
They use fuck it every once in a while too.
Yeah.
Jody, get us out of here. Come on.
All right, Silence Your Cell Phones is a show hosted by Jared Hubbard and Kevin Shelton. They talk about movies. Maybe they've seen Stalker, and they'll talk about that at some point. I don't know.
I doubt that.
Probably not. More than likely not.
They don't seem stalker type people.
Check out.
They're fine people.
Check
They're
out
just not stalker people.
They're just not stalker people.
Check out Silence Your Cell Phones.
The double entendre hit you there, didn't it?
Where
Yeah.
they might cover George Romero's Martin, a really weird vampire movie that nobody knows about because it's really strange.
They might talk about Alex Garland's new movie Civil War because that's a new movie.
There you go. Yeah. They're on all the pods platforms.
Jay, give us somebody.
I would like you to do the whiskey and wrestling one so you have something to do.
The whole point of me doing these hosting part of this is that
But you don't have to do those at all? Okay.
Send it back to him, Brady. You've got the power.
You have the
we'll
power.
pong this shit.
Okay. It's like bleep, bleep, bleep. Whiskey and wrestling. Michael Hill and Jason Holder. No audio cues. You wouldn't have heard that because it was on the other part of the episode. But whatever. But anyway, they talk about wrestling while imbibing a wonderful libation for which you may enjoy. A week's worth of news and views in the world of professional wrestling. Check them out on all major podcasting avenues. Again, that is Whiskey and Wrestling.
Listen to the review on the CM Punk and Jack Perry fight.
We need to not be lazy and like write up just our like thing that we're going to say for each thing so that we just have.
I have their
our little
intro
thing to go.
completely memorized. I could just do that every time.
Jesus Christ.
That's also fair.
Ethan, give us somebody.
Somebody.
That
All
is
right,
what
all right.
you asked for.
All right,
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury.
Boy thinks he's a comedian. Give us a plug so we can get the fuck out of here. It's hot here.
A plug.
A
Okay,
plug.
gotcha.
I was hoping you were going to pull the wire out of your radio microphone and hand it
We'll
to
just
him.
throw our headphones on the table and walk the
The
fuck
completed
out.
podcast, a Magic the Gathering centered podcast hosted by Christopher Vega, Brendan Scott Tanner, and Brendan Smith. They go about the ins and outs of competitive Magic. Fuck, my mind just blanked. They talk about
Stop right there. We're good.
they talk about the competitive side of different formats, modern, standard, not Commander. They talk about. They have interviews with pro players. Brendan Scott Tanner being a former player in the Pro Tour. They talk about their personal experiences with the game. Check them out. The completed podcast.
I like
Hey,
how you threw in not Commander.
Hey, we talked about a sci-fi movie this time, but if you'd like to hear something about some horror movies, check out, or TV shows too, check out Fearology with our friend Jody Kite. Maybe you know him.
He may have been on this episode.
Yeah,
but
he
I'm not
talks
sure.
about
Perhaps.
he talks about horror movies. Maybe one of the things that he refuses to tell us that he's doing is about you might hear later on an episode. Who fucking knows?
He might tell you 3 things that we can't know anything about because he's secretly CIA.
Next week it's gonna be, hey, I've got a third thing that I gotta do.
But I'm
that I
not
can't-
gonna tell
I can't
you.
tell you. He's just gonna tease us. You tease. Hey, don't be doing some Tony Khan long-term booking. We're gonna get tired after a while.
You can't spell Jody Kite without KGB. The B is his middle
I
name.
was about to say, I'll take your word for it. It's too late for me to do that math. So yeah, check them out wherever podcasts are listened to. Jody, Another one.
McDarrab Gaming.
Yep,
in
that's one.
Lovely Goshen, Mississippi. They have dice and cards and paints for minis, but no minis.
They
I'm
have
kidding.
a few minis.
They've got Star Wars stuff for
Yeah.
sure.
Shatterpoint. They have a couple boxes.
If you're
of
playing a
Shatterpoint.
miniature game, they don't have much. If you have,
If you're playing a tabletop
if you're
RPG.
doing D&D and you want a mini,
Holy
if they
shit.
can't find it, Greg will kiss you.
Right in the mouth.
That's a legal.
Trademark.
That's a legally binding contract. Our lawyer said so.
I said no fucking such thing. We are not going with me to support on that. I just think it'll be funny when people just start kissing Greg open faced on the mouth. It's like,
Hey, Greg, do you have this?
Greg, check out this miniature.
Hey, Greg, why don't you have a changeling druid?
I need this like homunculus. You don't have.
That's the sound people make when they kiss Greg.
Nom, 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 nom.
Omelet, and it's like omelet, but you cut out the et part. Om.
All right.
You helped make that a thing, Jody, just now. It's great.
Jay, I think, is it just one more? Or I don't know.
Then you got bearded drums.
Yeah, we have bearded drums. Stephen Nelson second, and our friend Jarrett
Fucking
Taylor
20
present
shows.
Bearded Drums, a podcast about drums from Gears to Gigs, including live performances recorded and played by Stephen Nelson and presented to you on YouTube and all major podcasting avenues. We got it. We're all clear as far as that goes.
Cool.
All right.
No
Rad.
more obligations.
Nope.
Well.
Nope.
Did we talk about what we're going to do next
No.
week?
Nope.
No.
Okay, cool. It's going to be a surprise.
To us.
Yeah, to us too.
A surprise that Jody doesn't even know about.
Oh my God, the layers of secrecy are
I am
piling
betting
up.
we figure it out on Sunday. So for that, I am Brady Davis.
I'm Jody Kite.
I'm Ethan Skinner.
James McCarthy.
And by that, I mean Travels on the Omnibus. That's the way I'm supposed to do it.
Hell yeah.
that worked, actually. That's pretty good.
Sure.
I like that.
Have a great time, guys. Enjoy the ride. Jody Kite
wrestling
made this.
Paper, that's a great thing to go off the air with. I love hearing that through my speakers. No, he never turns it off. It's always like this. There's going to be like 10 more seconds after they're
The
done.
more I listen
too.
to it, the more I don't mind it.